Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with David Strickle, the Stream of David, and Alex King is back in the house. Today is Tuesday, September the 29th, 2020. It's 4 p.m. New York time. And wherever you are in the world, thanks for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. Dan Mangana can't join us today. The roofers are really going at it, so he figured he would spare us all that pounding sound in the background, and he'll join us again on Thursday. But that's okay. We get to celebrate because, Alex, you're back, and it's been a while since we've seen you, but you're looking good. You got your headphones on. You're in good shape. All right. Welcome back. Glad to have you.
Be back.
Yeah. And you got a nice getaway that you were just telling us about, too. So you've actually had a chance to relax after all the stressful stuff you've been going through. And that's a good thing, too, to relax.
Little team time off for both of us. It's been a stressful situation.
Yeah. Are you feeling better?
I am feeling much better than the last time I was let out of the hospital. So
okay, good.
Got all this time.
Well, then healing. I'm glad you're healing. That's really good.
Yeah.
Excellent. And David is doing well. He told me before the podcast. But it's good to have you back, David. And we actually have questions for you and for the stream this week. So we're going to divide it up into two different pieces, just to kind of. We like to keep you, guessing. Which way is it going to be? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be the stream?
Just morphing back and forth instantaneously. We'll see.
Yeah, right. Well, we're testing to see how quickly you can connect and disconnect, right? But it's all good. And David actually lives in California, but he's not near the areas where the fires are going on, which is also a good thing. I mentioned the fires just because, we could get into all the LOA behind it, but the bottom line is a lot of people are being affected by it. So my thoughts every single day are going out to the people in California and Oregon, and basically thinking, I'm praying for some rain for you guys, not the lightning kind, just the regular rain to help put stuff out. And I'm hoping and thinking that people are going to come through this okay, and that there's, everyone's going to be healthy and it's all going to work out all right. So, but I want to let you know that we're thinking about you here on LOA Today. So with that thought in mind, I'm going to, first of all, I want to ask you, David, now that you've been on the show for about, what's been about 3 months now of doing these things, what's your impression? Every time that we get off, you say, well, yeah, I feel really good and so forth, but what do you think about like the questions that have been coming in? How do they compare to some of the other questions that you get from the other venues that you play, so to speak?
Because I always say that I have an echo. Do you hear that? Or is it just
a little bit. Yeah.
That I have a. Let me fix my sound real quick.
Sure. Take a moment there.
Okay, good. I thought it was me.
Can you?
So we're all fixing sound. That's good.
Echo, I think it's gone now. I just didn't want a major echo going there.
I think you're good.
I always feel like we get really deep, good questions in lots of different places, but there is something about coming here where I think it's something about your vibe with the stream. They get a really good workout because you are such. I see you as an Abraham Hicks super fan.
And we are, yeah. I am for sure. Yeah.
You personally, I think you've described yourself that way, and I think that because of that connection to Abraham, and you're so into those teachings, you are able to give the stream a really good in-depth workout, and you sort of use this platform not only to share the questions from your audience, but also to go even deeper, perhaps than you've gone in the Abraham teachings. And I love that because it brings out new information that I've never thought to ask and that no one else has ever thought to ask before. So that my favorite thing about the stream is something new from the interactions that the stream has with people.
We're getting a little bit of background noise. Hopefully that won't stick around. But in fact, I've kind of fancied myself for quite some time. Wouldn't it be great to be Jerry Hicks? Because I always thought Jerry had the best gig in the whole house. Esther was the one who had to do all the work. Jerry was the one who got to ask all the questions. And that's a great gig, So having the same opportunity is a lot of fun. And if I add in the fact that our listeners are also getting to ask the questions, to me, it's a win-win all the way around. But yeah, I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I'm glad the stream is getting that workout. That's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. You know, my first book I wrote just solo, and I wrote it before I really unleashed the stream on the world, if you will, with my podcast. I was sort of finishing up when I started my podcast. Now I've written another book. It took me 2.5 years to write. It's not published yet. We're just starting to look for an agent for that book.
Right, you mentioned
But this book, I have my book editor, who's my writing partner now in this book, and some other people from my mastery program asking questions of the stream. I had them go in and read the book, and anything they felt like wasn't fully fleshed out in the book, they could go in and ask questions. That way, anyone who's reading the book, hopefully their questions will be answered. And
that.
the questions, the book nearly doubled in size just by answering the questions in a challenged way. So
Wow.
a lot of new information. Yeah, well, you've experienced the stream enough to know that someone can ask a very simple question, and the answer can be very long sometimes.
Yeah.
Because they're sort of building a scenario around why this is, and the answer may be very simple, but they're always going to give you why behind these different ideas and things like that, so that they are sharing their wisdom with us.
Well,
Not
plus
just saying yes or no, this is how it is, and that's
yeah,
it.
oh yeah, sure.
They're
Yeah. Well, plus I've also noticed the stream does something that I kind of suspected that Abraham does, and they probably do, but I've definitely seen it with the stream, and that is the stream often comes into the conversation with a message, a particular message of the day, so to speak, something that they want to touch upon, and inevitably the questions in some way touch upon it, so they're able to do it. Now, I don't know if that's just them kind of pre-tapping into what the questions are ahead of time, or if it's just that they know where the conversation needs to go because of where it's been. But I'm impressed by that. I like the stuff that they brought up. I like the things they've decided to hone in on. For instance, recently there was the week where they said, let's talk about trust this week. And indeed, the first question that week, I believe, included a question about trust in it. And they just, like you said, they just went on. They kind of went off on the whole topic and just went into great depth about what it means to go into this stuff with trust, and what absolute trust is all about. And I'm thinking, wow, that's really, really good. That's not just answering questions. That's being here to help educate.
And that's definitely our goal, not just as an entertainment source, but they would not be flowing if we weren't asking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, more than that, they're anticipating. That's the thing that I'm noticing. They're anticipating what we're needing to ask and saying, okay, here's the message of the week. This is what's going to help you the most. I like that. Really good.
Good.
So, well, all right. Well, before we get into some stream question and answering, I have a question for you that comes from Carla. She says, when you were a trainer in the corporate world, how did you work through the resistance of trainees to accept the law of attraction to increase performance?
Oh, me personally.
You personally.
Okay. So it's funny because I was an executive, but I was a trainer, so I guess that makes sense that I would be identified as a trainer. So in my training, and I think I have shared on here before that I wove the law of attraction into a lot of sales training that I did, but I never called it law of attraction because that would have been met with resistance. In fact, I would have probably gotten myself in a lot of trouble if I started teaching anything that resembled spirituality or anything esoteric at all. I was off limits. I had to weave it in a different way. We could obviously talk about the power of positive thinking.
Sure.
We talked a lot about visualizing your ideal client. And really, the thing that I noticed pretty quickly is that some people bought onto it and others just didn't and wouldn't.
Yeah.
There were sort of two camps. But the thing that I noticed, and I had this bird's eye view of traveling to locations all over the Western United States and Western Canada, and really working with hundreds of people, literally, that from this bird's eye view, the people that bought into the idea that they had some control over their destiny, they had some control over their income, they were the ones that were successful, the ones that listened, the ones that put these things into play and said, I'm going to try that, I'm willing to try anything. The people that just were singularly focused and shut down and not open-minded were not successful. We had about a 50% success rate in that business. When we hired people, we knew that we were going to keep about half of the people that we hired. The other half weren't going to make it. And that's just sort of the nature of commission sales. And it's too bad because I could teach people to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. In fact, my top performing salesperson made $500,000 a year selling furniture.
Wow.
Yeah. She was way above everybody else, but it's possible. She just shows, that even blew me away. when there was someone that we hired as a translator in Vancouver, and her personality was so strong. I looked at her boss and said, "You need to promote her right away," and they did. And sure enough, she became the top salesperson in the history of that company, and
Wow.
went on to just blow every sales record away. And she just didn't pay attention to what the ceiling was or what anyone else was doing. She just did her thing, and it was just mesmerizing to watch. But in every single location I went to, there was always a couple of people that were sort of at the top, and they were always the ones that were willing to be open-minded and absorb new ideas and wanting to learn something new. And they were always wanting to know, what are they doing that's working for them, and how can I implement that in my business and my life or whatever. And then there was another type of person that was just cynical. They're lucky, they get the good customers, they have all these blessings and connections that I don't have. You know, the glass is half empty, and that was their reality. Their glass was half empty always.
I'm fascinated by the fact that she made that much money selling furniture. I mean, that's a tough sell. You don't
That could
have
be
a
a
lot of markup
whole
there.
an episode into itself. And there were circumstances that sort of aligned for her to do that, but she did.
Yeah. Wow, that's really impressive. I mean, that's a tough industry to make a lot of money in. Until, I mean,
Well,
now, if it's
you're
like
into law of
computers or
attraction,
something like that, you know, I'd say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But
commission sales can be a really good thing because it's a way for you to make unlimited income
sure.
without actually having to own a business.
Oh yeah.
I thought this is great. You can get in here and set your mindset towards success. And I worked for this company during the Great Recession, where our business dropped by half, more than half. And I was actually for a while flew around from location to location just to cut staff everywhere. My job literally was to go and show up and fire people. It was not a whole lot of fun. But in all of that, there were commission salespeople who never stopped their flow of income through the whole entire recession.
Sure. Yeah, and I believe that, and that makes sense. It's just, if I were to list the different kinds of careers where you could be a commission salesperson and make that kind of money, I don't think furniture would have been near the top of my list.
Well, typically in that business, someone, if you were really successful, you're making $100,000, $150,000.
Yeah.
You're doing really, really well. So she obviously, and there were a few that were sort of in that in between area, but she just blew it all away.
Wow, that's really impressive. Good for her. Very good for her. Also interesting too that you mentioned the people who were open to the ideas that we label LOA, that you obviously couldn't call LOA, were the ones who succeeded. The ones who weren't open to it were the ones who didn't succeed. And it just kind of made me wonder, boy, wouldn't it have been great if corporate America was open enough to hear that, and you could have actually said to them, let's focus more on hiring the people who are receptive to LOA, because you'll get more sales out of that. I mean, just that conversation would be an intriguing conversation. I know you couldn't really actually have it, but it would have been fun.
Yeah, I have found in my life the really, really, really wealthy people that I have been around, you know, friendships and you know, working for them and things like that. And I'm talking about really wealthy people, they are always open to esoteric things. They're not necessarily going to start a conversation about it. And they're not going to run around telling everybody, hey, I'm into the law of attraction, I'm into spirituality. But if you get into a deep conversation with them, they always are, always into anything could be, anything's possible. I want to learn, I want to hear, I have an open mind. The singular-minded people are usually not at the top of income because they believe they're limited. They don't want to hear, they want to tell you why they can't rather than learn how they can. And that's a big difference.
I remember my own experience when I was in my early to mid 20s. I experimented with trying to do sales, which was very much against my nature because I was so introverted. But I tried anyway and had some amount of success. At one point, I went through a program when I was living for a short period of time in Oregon, and it was a company that was owned by W. Clement Stone, who, of course, is fairly well known in success circles and positive psychology, positive thinking circles. He was Jack Canfield's teacher, for instance. And the people who were trying to teach me what W. Clement Stone was teaching me, I now understand had no idea how to teach it, because I sure didn't get it. At that point in time, the stuff that he was writing about just, I mean, I could see the words on the page, I could watch him talking on the film, but it wasn't connecting. I just didn't understand. And I didn't have any clue how to apply it into an actual sales environment, which I wasn't feeling comfortable with anyway. You know, so it's like I could see myself as somebody who was certainly willing to learn it, but there was nobody there to teach it. and as a result, I had a pretty mediocre career and a very short one. I wonder how many people, if people who came in and they didn't have any background, I didn't have any background, and they had at least some willingness. They really didn't understand any of it, but they had a good teacher who could teach them, and they were at least a little open to how LOA works. I wonder how many creative salespeople you could get that way. People who wouldn't normally make it. Any ideas about that? What do you think?
It has to do with just individual and how open they are to learn new things, and to really step outside the idea of that everything is just predetermined and it's just going to be what it is, and you're either lucky or you're not. And I didn't grow up necessarily feeling lucky, but I understood enough about the law of attraction that I understood very early on that I could create my own luck. But I certainly had stumbling blocks along the way to get that working in every area of my life, and then to get it working consistently in every area of my life. So I think that that's what a lot of people run into, is you find out about the law of attraction. I watched the movie, by the way, The Secret movie with Katie Holmes.
Oh yeah,
I think we were talking about that.
Dare to Dream, I guess it is.
I talked about it on my show yesterday, and I was telling Matt about it. It's I've never seen a Hallmark movie, but I imagine that's what a Hallmark movie is like.
It's not too far off.
No,
Alex, have you seen this movie?
I've seen the preview. I haven't been able to find it on the streaming services that I have, but yeah, it is very Hallmark-esque.
Yeah, very
vibes.
Feel good, very surface.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a nice message, and my ego can step in and get very critical of The Secret book very fast.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've done so much deeper work, and I understand law of attraction to be very different than just, hey, you dream of a pizza and it shows up at your door.
Right.
But I have to
Well, it was good humor,
that.
I have to say. I mean, it was fun.
It's an entry. It's a point of entry. It's a point of entry. And if you're willing to go further and further and further with your practice and develop a practice around it, then you'll get it. But it's not something, I don't think many people are just going to read a book and just completely change every aspect of their lives.
No, not really.
Yeah, great. But we have this thing called polarity and vibrational flow, which is what I teach about, that impact all of that stuff significantly. So the idea that you're going to marry a millionaire and the little girl's getting a pony and it's all going to be perfect all the time. It was very sugary for me, but yeah, there's a good message. I'm just glad there is a law of attraction.
I feel like that's what we have to do to get it in there. Like, you still have to have movie aspects for people to enjoy in order to slide the message in there. But it is a little too sugary for me. But I could see myself, my younger self, who wasn't as involved in LOA as I am today, actually enjoying that movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a snobbish point of view for me to be sitting there and you almost had it, guys. You almost had it. But now we're making wishes at the dinner table. Okay. All right.
Two words I never put in the same sentence before.
Movie would probably be a 6-hour movie. So
I mean, Alex and snob in the same sentence. I mean, it just doesn't work.
It doesn't. It doesn't go together.
Not really, no. So I'll have to sit with that one for a while.
I could see a lot of people on the Law of Attraction Changed My Life group complaining about this movie.
Yes. Very true. Very true.
The more snobbish you are, the more you attract.
Yeah, exactly.
That's hilarious.
Oh, that is funny. All right. Well, enough setup here. I think it's time for you to make your transition and connect to the stream so we can ask a couple of questions, because we got a couple good ones here. And while you're doing that, I will remind people that if you want to have your question included in these conversations with the stream, just use the Elevate Today app and just click on the thing that says send a question. You can find it under the goodies section, and send your question in, because that's where these questions come from. Also, make sure that you tell a friend to tell a friend, as Alex likes to say, because we want to keep sharing the Elevate Today app, and we're really appreciative of how many people are using it now. I don't know exact numbers. I can't give you exact numbers yet because the software that I have set up isn't working exactly the way I want it to, but I know lots of people are using it. Let's put it that way. I know lots are using it. And our numbers are increasing. We are now averaging over 600 listeners per show. So, things are good.
I've been referring people to the app. because I've been getting a lot of friend requests from listeners, and I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm glad you love the show. My list is very exclusive though. So here's what you do. Go download the app and you can reach me anytime on there.
I love it. I love it. That
It's
is
getting
great.
to be too much. It's getting to be too much.
That's cool though. That's really good.
Yeah.
So, looks like we have a connection. Hello, stream. And we got 2 questions today for you to address. And if we follow the usual pattern, that will probably take close to the rest of the show. So let's see how we go here. The first one's from Jim. And this is a rather lengthy question, so I'll read it through, and then if you need me to repeat it or repeat any part of it, I'll do that. But he's got like a lot of little sub topics and questions in there. A lot of description. So anyway, here's what he says. He says, can it be the case that we come to physical seeking more expansion and thus more difficult life, and then come again seeking less expansion and thus a less difficult life? Or when we come again, are we always coming back for a more difficult life? Or how does the level of difficulty in a life interplay with the realities we're experiencing in other environments simultaneously? He says, I'm trying to understand how I could be living a life of less contrast compared to so many, and yet find my way to your teachings. I recognize that my ego is judging more expansive versus less expansive experiences and judging myself. Yet again, these tangled beliefs are hard to sort out. So he's asking for help sorting all that stuff out. Can you help him, stream?
The thing that we will begin with is to once again state that you are all expansive beings by nature. And in your never-ending quest for expansion, and we are speaking to you in earthly human terms because that is our mode of communication with you in this medium. But you are indeed always seeking expansion in your experiences. And you are not just experiencing physical as a human being on planet Earth. This is one of infinite experiences that you are expressing yourself in physical as. You do exist as a human type form, or perhaps even a human form, at the same time that you are experiencing the life that you are in. You are truly multidimensional. And we limit our sharing of this information because there's a tipping point to where the vastness of it is beyond your comprehension, and the sharing of this is not of great use to you. But when you ask questions, it is David's desire for us to answer. It is our desire to answer as best we can, utilizing his intellect, vocabulary, and human communication tools. Anything that you ask, there's nothing that's off limits. But again, you often ask these questions, all of you, in linear, measurable human terms. And the idea of coming and existing in linear earthly time and leaving and returning and leaving and returning is not the way you really exist. These existences, if you will, are all occurring simultaneously. There is no linear time. The expansion that is experienced is what you would, the closest thing that you would identify as real time, because the experience itself is ever evolving and ever expanding. There are expressions in human form on your planet, many at this time, that are not aligned with our teachings. That they are not ready for this type of information, and there is nothing wrong with that. They are expressing themselves in such a way that they are not in alignment with traveling down a path such as this. The degree of contrast that one has encountered is not necessarily the indicator of readiness for this type of information. There are some that have experienced lives of relative ease that find their way into our path, and there are others who have encountered significant tragedy significant obstacles in their lives, that this is their only relief, and everything in between. That there is no specific path that aligns you with our teachings, other than the fact that you are ready to open your mind to why you're really here. You perhaps are questioning everything that you've been taught, and you are paying attention to that innate voice that you all have that tells you that you are the creator of your reality, but not many are ready to take on that responsibility. Those of you who are seeking teachings such as this. And those of you who are ready to go beyond the surface teachings of a topic such as law of attraction are ready for what we are here offering. That is David's intention in the sharing of our message, and that is our intention with this. So your alignment with our teachings or not has little to do with where you are on your vibrational journey eternally and how you are experiencing your current perceived lifetime is not one in a linear path, but it is one expression among infinite expressions that you are in simultaneously.
So that simultaneity is sort of the wrinkle in the whole thing. I like what you said before. There is no linear time, which kind of upsets the way Jim put his question together, but it's an important point, because if there's no linear time, then we need to kind of shift our thinking away from, well, it happened first, I did this, and then I came here to do that, and then I had this other lifetime for this. And as you're saying, that isn't really the way it works, which is kind of mind-bending for us, but nevertheless, it's something we have to kind of keep in mind, I think. So if we follow up with that, oh, go ahead.
There are times that we will work within the reference of linear time and work with the idea of you coming and going and coming again and going somewhere else, because it makes sense. And the crux of the question, if that idea answers the question accurately without having to veer off into all these other paths, we will communicate in such a way. This question specifically needed that clarity, that we're not here and back and there again. It is all occurring at once, and you are expressed physically simultaneously through infinite experiences, including multiple experiences as a human being on planet Earth.
So once again, you answered the question before I asked it, which is really, really cool of you. Which was, okay, so how do we handle the fact that we tend to think linearly? You just answered it beautifully. Let me see if I can follow up a little bit more on what Jim was asking, because his real question seemed to be about the fact that he himself in his own life feels like he doesn't have a whole lot of contrast going on. And I guess the follow-up question I have is that true? I mean, is it really true that that there are differences in contrast from one life to the other, or is it merely just a matter of perception?
You all create your own bubble of reality, and David was meeting with one very recently, an individual from significant, and this individual's significant wealth was not the only lack of contrast in their life. The health was excellent. The personal relationships was excellent. There were many areas where most human beings would desire very much to be in alignment with this individual. Yet this individual is seeking our counsel because their contrast is that they have too much money. And it is their contrast. And David felt the pain of their contrast in that interaction. Deep pain. That possessing a great deal of wealth has its own set of contrast that comes along with it. And we understand that many of you are hearing these words thinking that you would love to experience that level of contrast. We understand
some people are thinking about, yeah.
There is indeed contrast on all topics. So when this is why you see the ones that suddenly come into great wealth solve many problems and then create just as many more in the creation of the wealth. That is true on all topics in your world. Money in your current world solves many problems, and it is in fact a necessity for you. But there's a tipping point to where significant wealth becomes its own problem. So there is no such thing as a bubble of reality that is free of contrast. That is a judgment. And very often when a being is experiencing a life of relative ease, they will place things in their paths vibrationally to disrupt that ease for the expansion that is offered, but that is not required. There is no judgment from us with how you do this. There is no judgment from us whatsoever with how much contrast you place in your paths. And if you are placing what you consider little contrast in your paths and still finding your path here to go deeper and learn more, there is a reason behind it that will ultimately reveal itself, and it will not necessarily be what you would consider a negative reason, but there will be something that will reveal itself in your desire to go to this depth.
Before I take that to the next step, I just wanted to alert listeners, if you've been hearing strange background noises and some distortions from when David's talking and so forth, it's because we have some connection issues going both with Alex and with David, and we're trying to straighten them out as best we can. Alex, just so you know, I muted you. If you need to talk, just unmute yourself. And David, nothing you can really do. I'm just seeing that at times your connection is dropping, but we'll just let the tech people take care of that and keep going. So interesting. I love the answer you gave there, Stream. And I guess the only other thing I'd want to ask is, since we all are experiencing contrast at all times, and this is kind of like a follow-up to what I asked a moment ago, then it really is how we're perceiving it. I mean, from what Jim was saying, it sounds to me like he's probably experiencing the contrast. He just isn't giving it a whole lot of, I'm so worried about that. He's just letting it be, which is ultimately that long distance perspective you tell us about. That's the way I read it. Is that the way you read it?
There's an idea of progressing from, you often hear the terms 3D and 5D. The way we would describe 5D is you're experiencing 3D with less fear and less judgment, and discernment toward the things that you appreciate, and appreciating the things that you once considered negative, because you come to a place where you understand that in your appreciation of the negative, you come to detune it much faster, and is no longer negative. It is actually serving as a conduit to the next positive creation in your solving of it. So therefore, from that perspective, nothing is negative. Everything is positive, which is our perspective. And when you teach yourself to maintain that perspective through your up and down vibrational flow, you are really humming along in your lives in that way. You come to appreciate all of your obstacles. You come to appreciate all of the things that you have endured throughout your lifetime. And this breaks the unwanted cycles of unwanted things reoccurring again and again and again in your lives. When you start living your lives like that, your lives get really, really joyous. And that is where we're guiding all of you to, if you wish to go there.
Yeah, that joyousness is actually, in many ways, it can be viewed as a lower contrast thing. It isn't that the contrast is lower, it's just that we're just thinking about it that way, and it's not affecting us, and we're feeling good.
It's all about your reaction.
Yeah, our reaction's everything. So, okay, that's good. Let me go on to the next question we have on the list here. This is from Carla, and she's the one who asked David the question earlier about his experience when he was a trainer in the corporate world, but she also has a question for the stream. And she says, Stream, now this is going to sound a little strange. When you're not channeling through David, what do you do? In other words, when David is not channeling, do you still provide him instruction, or is this that, is this like some other consciousness level? If David needed immediate assistance, like a miracle, could you or would you assist? Can you channel through other humans, or are you exclusive to David? How does that work?
This is a very good question, because it is important to understand that we refer to ourselves as we, though we are not a we. We are not a collective of beings, even though David at one time identified us that way. He has come with our guidance to understand on a deeper level that we are eternal consciousness, and that what exists beyond physical is consciousness, and all consciousness is collective. We are the core of what you would identify as source consciousness, the core of all consciousness. We are available to all of you, but you all receive us in your own special way. And we are always available to all beings. Human beings tend to and not exclusive to planet Earth even, and certainly not exclusively, human beings, due to your increased intelligence, have more tools and a more developed ability to drown out our connection to you. And in drowning that out, you are shutting off your intuition. You are shutting off things that are not readily identified on your planet as real. Yet you all know that they are there. And that is your connection to us. David has allowed this to develop within him over his entire lifetime in such a way that he receives this message and has even trained himself to write it and speak it through intentionality. You are not all necessarily going to do that in this way, though our energy is available to all of you. And that is why we guide you to meditation, so that it becomes realized by you if you are not already doing so. And understanding that when you release fear, you release judgment. And when you release fear and judgment, your ability to trust increases. And when you are trusting the universe and understanding the creative power of your imagination, you become the masters of your bubble of reality. And in mastering your bubble of reality, the more you keep your vibration in a higher state, a more positive state, and you do that by not judging your vibrational flow, because if you're not judging your vibrational flow, your default vibration is automatically in a higher state. And in that higher state, we are flowing. That is your intuition. That is your knowingness. That is you innately attracting the things that you want to you with little thought, with little effort. That is what you're all here for. That is what you're hearing these words for. We are not bouncing around from physical existence to physical existence, flowing differently through different human beings. We are flowing through all. But the human that is receiving us and sharing us offers a level of filtration from their perspective and utilizing their own intellect and vocabulary, as David is doing as we interact right now. The difference that you receive in David's sharing that perhaps you have encountered before is that his intentionality with this is to filter us as little as possible, to offer the rawest possible message without any preconceived religious notions or anything of that nature. There are others, and have been others, that have expressed our energy in a very similar way, but never another that did it exactly the same. There is uniqueness in all of these sharings. And the reason that this is because you all are aligned with different teachers at different times for different reasons. And those of you who hear our words and are open to it and with whom they resonate, those individuals are aligning with a message that they are ready for, that will serve them. If our words are not resonating or not making sense or a big turnoff or something of that nature, then you're right to move on from them. That it is not the right message for you at this time. That does not mean that it will not be in the future. But at this time, you are seeking a different type of guidance from a different teacher.
How about the part of her question where she was asking about what happens when David's not channeling you? Because Carla was asking, do you still provide him instruction or assistance, or is that some other consciousness that does that? If he needs immediate assistance, do you help him with that?
David has learned through our guidance that all he needs to do is raise his vibration to a certain level, and that is the on switch for our guidance. In fact, very often he does not need to seek out our guidance. It is already there. It simply drops in, and the circumstances around his life that are aligned with his desires drop in automatically in his higher vibrational state. He is not special in that way. This is true for each and every one of you. But this is the origin of the Taya practice, which he created around our teachings. He now teaches this to people all over the world, to raise their default vibration in such a way that they are up in high vibration most of the time, dip down into lower vibration through vibrational flow naturally. But in the detuning of transgressors, the judgment is voided, if you will, and the transgressor energy that holds the vibration down for a prolonged period and creates the triggers that cause more unwanted things to cross his path have been eliminated. So it's not a life of perfection. It never will be. None of you are here for perfection, but it's a very, very different way of operating your lives from what you were taught on your planet at this time. Allowing this vibrational flow up and down through positive and negative, creating some obstacles indeed, but meeting those obstacles in joy, understanding your power to solve them, and understanding that you place those obstacles in your paths for the solving of them and receive the expansion that your soul consciousness desires in the solving of your obstacles, which takes you right back up into high vibration. The answers are always all there. It's all about where you are focusing your attention, high or low. And when you start judging and disliking the downward flow, you're simply holding yourselves there for a prolonged period of time. So David has figured out in his life how to manage this vibrational flow in such a way that is very joyous and satisfying and creates a lot of abundance, but not perfection. And now he has taken these set of tools that he's created for himself and he's teaching it to others.
Yeah, which is great. It's really good. And I love the answer too, because you actually didn't directly answer the question. You answered it better than what the question was. That's pretty good. That's a tough skill. A couple things that follow up from it. You pointed out that you, the stream, are not a group of individuals. We refer to you as we, but really you're just pure consciousness. And the best image I guess I have of that is kind of like a flow of electricity or quanta of light or something like that, where there aren't any. It's really not meaningful to speak in terms of distinct units, although that's what scientists tend to do. But rather, it's more meaningful to think of it as the flow of whatever it is, light, water, whatever. And in that context, I guess I have a couple of questions to raise. One is, we humans often refer to contact that we have through our intuitions, through our psychic abilities and so forth. We refer to connections with angels or spirit guides or, help from abroad, from the other side or that kind of thing. And we usually think about these individuals as individuals. We don't think of them as just a stream of light or a stream of water or a stream of consciousness or however, whatever analogy we're choosing to use. And indeed, a lot of people who provide the ability to be a medium or, to in some way provide some sort of psychic service to others will connect to, family members and so forth. And then they'll identify characteristics of the family members and so forth. So it creates a little bit of a dichotomy here. On the one hand, everything is on the source energy side. I'm learning not to call it the non-physical side. Everything on the source energy side is just sort of continuous consciousness. On the other hand, we humans feel like we're connecting to individuals. Could you help clarify what's going on here? Because that's a little confusing.
We will begin by saying often that your imagination is a powerful creative tool. And in fact, your entire planet and everything on it, especially you can identify that your human created structures and in highways and in vehicles and in things of this nature all began as imagination. So your imagination is a powerful creative tool, and it is. We fall short of using the term amusing or interesting, but it is a bit of a unique characteristic, especially among humanity, where you discount your imagination so much that you focus on the 3D and you state that things in your imagination are not real. Anything that you can imagine is creating a reality for you. As a human being, your consciousness is limited to your ego human consciousness. That is to provide you a unique one-off experience as the expression of the human being that you are in this lifetime that you are perceiving. From that limited consciousness, which is created to give you this life of contrast, so that you are not all knowing and all seeing, so that you are having a vibrational flow and creating obstacles and expanding in the overcoming of them. That is the foundation for what we are sharing here. What we are communicating, though, is that all of these human-like beings, your guides, your masters, your angelic beings that are very human-like, those are egocentric creations of your imagination to help you filter what you are receiving from the energetic realm in a way that is helpful to you. And that there is nothing not real about it. There is nothing wrong with it. There's nothing inaccurate or incorrect about any of it. But it is your own unique creation. You are receiving our energy and identifying it as something very often relating to teachings that you have received. You have specific angelic beings that are different energies that you all perceive. And in these energies, your perception is very based on teachings that you have absorbed in a 3D way. And you get into, you move from religion to spirituality, and suddenly you go from talking about God and Jesus and angels to spirit guides and ascended masters. And you are indeed perceiving them in that more complex way. That is your imagination bridging the gap between your 3D reality and your connection to our energy, the energetic realm. We are not guiding you away from that at all, but understand that these human-like beings are your own creation. And when a medium is reading another human being, very often they're not even aware of the fact that their ability to read the wholeness of the being that was is incomprehensible as a human being. What they are reading is how that being was expressed in relation to the person that they're reading. They are reading the person first and that person's connection to their passed on loved one. And in that connection to the passed on loved one, the best way that we can describe in human terms is there is a connection that is created that we would describe as vibrational dust. And this vibrational dust is the imprint that being has continued to leave on their loved ones. So that is why when you go to a psychic for a reading, that psychic is going to hone into, and if, for example, your grandmother's energy as you knew your grandmother, as it relates to you and can be helpful to you, not the wholeness of that which your grandmother is eternally. Certainly not. That would be beyond human comprehension, and there would be no use in all of that to you. That is where we get David into trouble when we start speaking of past life regression. The idea of exploring your past lives, our answer to that is which one? They're infinite. If there is use in it and in perceiving energy that is beyond your current lifetime and helping you figure out your current lifetime, then use it, then do it. It all has the power that you give to it. We are not here saying that any of this is wrong or shouldn't be explored, but what we are saying is that you are all such infinite beings that you cannot begin to comprehend the vastness of it in your current state. And there is not a lot of use for that. If there were a lot of use for that, you would have more knowledge of it.
So let me take it a step further, because I love what you're describing there. I want to see if I get it, if I really understand it. And I'm going to try to express my understanding through what are typically taught by various spiritual teachers today. I'm going to draw in this particular case from the author of The Celestine Prophecy and other books that he wrote, a man named James Redfield. And what he talks about is something that a number of people into spiritual discussion will allude to as like, this is the way stuff works in the spiritual world. So broadly speaking, in this paradigm that a lot of people tie into, we come into this world with what is called a birth vision. We have this idea of how we want our lives to go. It's sort of an idealized form. We come into the world, it doesn't quite work out that way. Things, we run into the polarity, the contrast, and things play out differently from what we expect. We go through our lives to one degree or another. We either succeed in playing out our birth vision to some degree, or we fail, or whatever. And then when we die, we're either feeling regret that we didn't actually pull it off, or some success that we actually did pull it off. And we do this whole life review in which we see what happened, and then we have a whole bunch of our spirit guides around us who are pouring love into us to help us get through this thing and feel really good about the whole thing. So that's like this very common paradigm that gets laid out. Now, let's talk about that in terms of what actually happens.
The idea of physical and having an alignment that is created based on a desire is not off base, certainly. you all come as a strand of soul consciousness and align with a desire for expansion, and place yourselves in the path of contrast to varying degrees, because you are all bringing all that you are into this lifetime, understanding that the vast majority of that is going to be overshadowed with your human consciousness, and that you are going to come and have this unique one-off human experience of contrast. The description that we offer is that you are going to place yourself in vibrational alignment of a set of circumstances, and that set of circumstances, from your point of entry, is going to serve as the roots of your branches vibrationally in your life. And your sum of choices of how you react to these roots will then place you on a path of branches. And there will be twists and turns, and some of you will achieve beyond what you imagine possible in your young years. Others will not come anywhere near it, and some will die young tragically from your perspective. There is no getting it wrong in any of that. What we would like to clear up is this idea that when you come and are stillborn or aborted, or come as a terminally ill child who does not make it beyond the age of 5, or perhaps you move into your teen years and are killed tragically in a car accident, or die of a drug overdose in your 20s, whatever that is, that there is no wrong. There is no returning to non-physical with regret of how you operated this lifetime. There is no having to come back and do it again because of the way that you lived the last one. There is expansion offered in every single experience. Different types of expansion, different types of experiences. Think about the most well-rounded human beings that you're aware of are the ones that take risks, take chances, place themselves, perhaps travel a lot, and place themselves in multiple varieties of experiences while you're in physical. Non-physical is a reflection of that. And non-physical, when you project yourself in, and you were born understanding that you are aligning with terminal cancer from birth, and you live 4 to 5 short years in a children's hospital, and return to your completed state from there, that is a unique experience for your soul. And there is expansion offered in that. In fact, very often, what we would consider a more sophisticated strand of consciousness that has experienced multi-dimensions in different expressions would come and choose that. This is, again, the example that we offer of the young child that does not make it beyond age 5, and after their death, everyone laments on how enlightened they were and how at peace with their experience they were. That is a small child that came with an awareness innately of what their journey was, and was at peace with it, and was inspiring to all around them. And from our perspective, that would be celebrated. That wouldn't be something that is sad. We understand the perspective of the parents and things of this nature, but from a more zoomed out point of view, one where you understand that you are experiencing infinite expressions of physical simultaneously, and each one of them has nuggets of wisdom and expansion to offer to your soul, then you are not judging your human experience from your ego perspective. And when one says that there is a life that is lived that was wrong, that needs to be repeated, and the spirit guides are healing and things of this nature, that all harkens back to an egocentric perspective of judgment of how you live your lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that resonates a lot with me. I'm not sure how that resonates with listeners, but I'm sure we'll get the emails to tell us. But that makes a lot of sense to me. As one example, I once had an experience shortly after my father passed, and I've relayed that story here on the show, about how I was able to connect with my father in a dream state. And we hugged, we talked for an extended period of time, and it was very soothing for me. It was very helpful for me. Just prior to that experience, right after my father passed, my sister had a very brief experience in which she, in her mind, realized that she was getting a contact from our father, and had the presence of mind to ask him, what's it like on the other side? And his answer came back that it was festive. And I have that stuck in my mind. The answer was that it was festive, not I went through a whole dream review or life review, not that I went through a whole bunch of stuff, just that it felt good. It was a happy place to be in. It was a very joyous, continuous experience. And that didn't jibe for me with all the stories about, the life review and all that other kind of stuff. It just seemed to me, if we really do want to understand what it's like in what I no longer am willing to call the non-physical realm, what I'm now trying to call the source energy realm, if we want to really understand that, then that realm has to always be joyous. You described it as returning to a state of completeness, I think you called it. And I think that's a really, it's a term that's kind of dripping with meaning. Returning to a completed state like that kind of suggests that when we're in life, in physical life, we are still in the process of completing this journey, I guess, is what that amounts to. And when we come through, we have completed the journey. So now we're in that completed state. But ultimately, the source energy consciousness experience that you're describing, it sounds like it's always complete at all times. Am I misreading that?
You are absolutely accurate. The way we use these words, the completed state is a state of all knowing, all seeing, all being eternally. And you are all part of that. These physical lives that you are experiencing are strands of your consciousness expressing itself in physical for the expansion of the experience that is offered. And any connection from your human perspective that you have to that is always going to be humanized. And the reason that these spiritual teachings work for the people that absorb them is because the people that are absorbing them have given that the power. Anything that you give the power to, whether it is religion or spirituality or atheism or science or whatever, anything that you give the power to is going to work for you as long as you are giving it the power, because the power to transform is within you. This is how dogma is created, because individuals discover something and believe it to be true, give it the power to transform them, and it does. And they will argue vehemently about it. This is why we joke that we get David into trouble very often, because people come and say that your spirituality is just as dogmatic as your science, which is just as dogmatic as your religion, which is just as dogmatic as atheism. It is all tainted with ego, all of it. And this is why you will hear David say over and over again his egocentric opinion. Mm-hmm. Things are tainted by his ego, because you all have one, and you're all operating from that perspective most of the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's why you're here as human beings, to allow your egos to drive you through this lifetime as your soul consciousness is calling you forward through it for the experience that is offered. And there's no right or wrong in any of it. So if you have landed on a set of teachings that are as what you have described in these books, and they are serving you, then you are in the right place. But we are always going to share a very unfiltered perspective. And one of the reasons that David's perspective and the way that he allows our message to flow is so unfiltered is because he has not spent a lot of time absorbing those things. He went inward, always, and never trusted or even respected anything that was external. And he's unique in that way. Not certainly the only one on the planet, but unique among many, that you can ask him about spiritual teachings. He is not very aware of much of it.
Yeah, I get it entirely. And as usual, the conversation has gotten so in-depth and so wonderful. I want to keep going, even though we've just used up an hour. So I'm going to have to ask you to do your disconnect so we can finish talking with David. Alex, I don't know what your take was on what was going on here, but I just felt like what we often feel as we do an hour show, like, can't we go another half hour? That's what it feels like. It feels that way. Like, I have so much more I want to go into.
Yeah. That was the best explanation of the medium I've ever heard, though.
Yeah, really good. Huh? Yeah, very clear. Very clear. I'm not sure if I like the word tainting, but without that tainted ego part. Just here's what's actually going on. Yeah, I find that to be much more useful. I know that other people will find, the whole religious icon type imagery or the spiritual imagery, the ascended masters, whatever, they're going to find that to be useful. That's great. For me, I like the pure stuff.
Yeah.
It just feels more true.
Agreed.
You think so too? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So once again, David, I don't know how much you'll actually have remembered of all that, but we got pretty deep there. That was pretty cool, especially toward the end.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you'll get the recording, but your team has been taking the video and cutting it into pieces. And I think that last bit they're going to, I don't know how they'll cut that one down into a bite size, but it was really good because essentially
40-minute answers to a simple question.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Well, no, what we were doing is I started with a question. It was the second question that we had. It was from Carla, and she was asking about how the stream interacts with you when you're not channeling. And it evolved into a conversation of, well, what is all this stuff about, the iconography of religion or of spirituality? How does all that really fit in? What are we really talking about when we're talking about spirit guides or angels or whatever? And how do we reconcile that with the idea that the stream actually specified at one point, there really isn't a we to us, they said. But we're just continuous consciousness. We call it we, but that's just because, that's the way we kind of explain it. But they were making the point, this is all just continuous consciousness that all humans have a connection to. And I was kind of jumping on that and saying, wow, that really gets right past all of this other iconography, gets right to the core of it. This is just tapping into core consciousness.
Yeah. Well, what is beyond physical is just consciousness, and we shouldn't say just consciousness, because
just is almost too meaningless, right?
But it's not a deity or a god or a judgmental entity needing to be worshipped. It's not a group. I have perceived it as a group for my own benefit, just because when I am receiving information, this might kind of tie to the question I think that you asked, if I'm recalling correctly. I have used my imagination to create sort of a boardroom setting.
Oh.
where they are sort of meeting with me, because it's easier for me to comprehend guidance and questions and answers when it's about me.
That's cool.
It's like channeling for myself. I used to go on with I don't think you don't know Matt. Matt is a mutual friend of Dan and mine. That's how I met
seen
Dan.
a couple of the shows that you and he have done together.
He hosts my show. Well, I used to go on Zoom, and I'd give Matt questions, and he would ask the stream questions for me, and I would go back and watch the Zoom and get the answers and just for detailed stuff. Because the knowingness drops in, but for some reason when it's specific to me and I'm trying to get really specific with it, I had to create a scenario in my imagination that allowed them to come through in such a way that we could sort of converse, if that makes sense.
Got it.
And I appreciate that, because that's always been something I've desired, to be able to have that conversation. So hearing how you did it by setting up a boardroom, that's pretty cool. You understand.
Cool as the actual channeling. When you ask something and I'm channeling it and I'm not even really present, I'm sort of in the background.
Right.
That's when the stuff comes out that I'm in the background going like, holy shit, that's really interesting. So I don't get that in the boardroom. Usually in the boardroom, it's more like, okay, that's kind of what I was thinking you were going to say, that sort of thing. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously that's what the video replay is for, so you can actually find out what you said when you're actually receiving what the stream says.
I watch it back all the time. I do.
Yeah. But the boardroom idea, that I've wondered how you would actually have that conversation. That gives me a little bit better clue. You create this imaginary boardroom.
It's a stream of consciousness coming in, and I don't really see people. It's just like I'm aware that I create this sort of these individuals sitting around me so that I can sort of converse rather than just the asking and letting it drop. It just doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work where I can just ask and everything just drops right in.
It's kind of similar. It's similar to what people call the mastermind group, except that you're creating a mastermind group in your mind, so to speak. You've imagined this mastermind group. Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, once again, we burned through an hour, and it's been wonderful. So thank you very much for spending this time with us, because I'm loving this. I know our listeners do too, but I really love this. This is really good stuff. And Alex, we're so glad you were here once again, we're looking forward to having your presence each time here. And I gather you were enjoying it as much as I was.
I was, yes.
Yeah, it was like, whoa, yeah, what's coming next? I can hardly wait. So thank you guys very much. Thank you especially to our podcast listeners as well. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.